Hello world, it's Sammy Kings. Now, in our series of 9 days DevOps, today we are going to be talking about load balancers. Wow. Alright, so we are progressing. Now, when we talk about load balancers, what comes to our mind here? Well, you can liken load balancers to the concept of division of labor. Like our elementary school, we were taught that division of labor is splitting down the workloads into smaller chunks to different people so that work becomes much more easier and faster, right? That's cool. Now, if we relate this to the software engineering space, when you talk about load balancing, it's about balancing the number of workload on a particular server amongst other servers. It can be one, it can be two, or amongst your servers in your server farm. It can be a cluster of servers, whichever. So that's just a bird's eye view about load balancers. Yeah. Now, how can we now install a load balancer? Now, first things first, we need to know that load balancer is an application. That is an application called load balancer that when we install on our machine, it now enables our machine to now carry out load balancing, just like what we've learned previously on the concept of web servers, in which web server is just an application that we install, right? So in that same way, we have a load balancer as an application. Now, before we even go down that route, there are actually two types of load balancers. You have the software type of load balancer and then the hardware type. Now, the hardware type are mostly used by network engineers, and they are usually layer 4 and layer 7. They are layer 4, layer 7 OSI. There are layer 4, layer 7 routers, dedicated switches or router that are usually installed on the OSI model. So that's that about that. I won't go much into the network detail because really I'm not a network engineer, but I just read about them while doing the load balancing project during my days in the ALX SE program. So I still remember that fact. Okay, now we're actually going to be concerned about the software aspect. Now, the software aspect, we have different types of load balancing software. We have HAProxy, you have Nginx, because yes, you can actually use Nginx as a load balancer, and there are many other applications that enable us to carry out load balancing, but the top two are usually HAProxy and Nginx. But in this particular video, we're actually going to be installing HAProxy. Okay, so on this here, I have my Webo 1 and my Webo 2, which are two different machines that they currently have, like I say, called local host. Now, why is it taking so long? Okay, you can see this is saying hello Sammy. Then if I do the same thing called local hosts, you can see this is the default page that Nginx serves us. We've actually been able to establish why this happens and why this also happens from our web server explanation. So if you have not watched that particular video, I'm actually going to be putting the link to that particular video in the description. But let's say I forget. Now this particular video is going to be added to a playlist called ALX Advanced DevOps. So look into that playlist and find the video web server 9 days of DevOps web server. It has a detailed explanation on the concept of web server and Nginx. All right, okay, if you're new to the channel, give me a subscribe, turn on the post notification bell so that anytime I post a video, you get that notification. And if you've been a big fan of me, you like my content, you like my videos, you like my work, well, give me a like, share the video so that other persons actually passing through the challenges I'm solving using my videos can actually benefit from them. Okay, with that said, now let's move to actually installing HAProxy. Now, what I'm going to be doing in this case, I have my two servers, right? However, I'm going to be installing HAProxy on my Docker container that is currently residing on my local machine here. It's still basically the same concept. So I'm going to be making a request from my Docker container here, and because these two machines are live on the internet, they're actually going to be routed to the different machine based on the algorithm I set. Well, we're actually going to be going through the load balancing algorithm. So now, first things, the first one is out of the way. What is a load balancer? Now, next up, how can we install load balancers, right? Now, we're actually going to be installing HAProxy. So at this point in time, on my GitHub repository, of which I'm actually going to be dropping the link also below, on my GitHub repository, I actually made a script called installing HAProxy safely to enable you install HAProxy safely. But let's say, however, you don't want to use that script, because I actually made that script from the understanding I got reading the HAProxy official documentation, installation documentation. That also I'm going to be adding in the description of the video. Yeah, so first you want to click on that link to understand how it works, because what I understood by reading that particular resource was the fact that depending on your version, or depending on your Ubuntu system, depending on your system, there's different versions that is compatible with it. There's different versions of HAProxy that is compatible with it. As such, you want to use the version that is compatible with your current Ubuntu version or your system version. That is the reason why I am recommending that resource for us to go and use. Okay, so on my Docker container here, first you want to check if HAProxy is present, and I'm going to do this with this HAProxy. I'm going to complete that. Okay, so if I run this, I should see if HAProxy is available on my application. If it is not, then you just want to do an apt update to do that. Okay, and yeah, I have HAProxy, so meaning that I can actually, so yeah, if you don't want to actually read the resource, you can actually just run this command, and it's actually going to install the HAProxy version that is compatible with your current version. That's when you actually follow this process I am about to do right now by doing install HAProxy, a single R, then I'm going to put Y. So if I run this, it's going to install the HAProxy version that is currently compatible with this. But let's say you want to install a particular version. Now let's say the version here is 2.4 or 2.2, but let's say you actually want to install 1.6. Let's say you want to install something like that, 1.6. First thing, so you want to actually go and check if 1.6 is compatible with your current version. Now the current version of this my Docker container here is Ubuntu 20.04. okay, but on my workstation here is Ubuntu 22.04. all right, so I'm just going to run this and let it do a work. Now, how fast this is going to go is dependent on your internet connection speed. You can see mine literally took let's say 30 seconds max. I wasn't counting, but let's just say it took 30 seconds. So it's done. Okay, so since it's done, let's check if HAProxy, because from our web server, we've understood the fact that there are some packages that we install and they automatically start up. An example of that is Nginx and MySQL. So now let's check if when we install HAProxy, it automatically starts up. Okay, so I'm just going to check this on my machine. To check this, I'm going to do sudo service, then the name of the service, which is HAProxy. Then what I want to check is the status. Now this is different when you're using the system D. When you're using the system D, if you're using the system D or the system CTL, it becomes system CTL status HAProxy. But when you're using service, it's reverse. Okay. Oh, sorry, I'm already root, so I don't need to proceed this with sudo. Sorry. But since if you're going to be running this on your LB O1 server, you actually need to use this sudo. You actually need to proceed this with sudo, but then I'm just going to run this. Oh yeah, didn't write that correctly. It is HAProxy, and you can see in this machine here HAProxy is not running. So probably it's because I installed it on the container, I don't know, but one thing I could note now here is that it's not running. So to run this, I just have to change the status to start, and you can see starting HAProxy. Okay, now if we then check for the status, you can see HAProxy is running. So well, I want to stop this, and then let's look at the configuration files. Okay, so you can see I've stopped it. Now to look at the configuration file, which we actually talked about, how I'm able to know that it's actually going to be residing on the etc directory in the web server video. Again, if you've not watched that, go back to the video. All right, now let's look at this. Now we can see currently here we only have 2 files on the HAProxy directory. Now one is errors and another HAProxy. Now let's look at the permissions of the file. Okay, sorry about that. Now let's look at the permissions of the file. Okay, see, so it means that okay, this particular files here belongs to the root. Now note I'm currently logged in as root. Now if you are running this on your load balancing server provided to you by ALX or any machine and you're not root, this might change. However, that's why I actually had to run this here so that you could see. So if it's still saying root, well, you really want to change that. I also showed a command in which you could use in the web server explanation video. Okay, since that's out of the way, we have errors and we have HAProxy.cfg. So now let's look at what's there. Let's look at what's the content on the HAProxy file, and we can see by default this is our default configuration file. This is the default configuration files. Okay, now our goal here is to actually balance the request, right? We should actually balance any request coming from our machine to or coming from the outside world to our 2 backend machines, which we have here and here, right? Okay, so to make things okay, now let's just continue. So now we need to specify our balancing algorithm in which we are going to configure. Like, how are we going to configure? Because now we've known what is a load balancer, we've known how to install a load balancer, we've also known types. Yeah, now how can we now do the load balancing? It boils down to your load balancing algorithm you're going to be using. Now there are more than 3 balancing algorithms. However, the 3 most popular, that at least we are exposed to in the ALX SE program is a round robin balancing algorithm, the weighted algorithm, the weighted balancing algorithm, or sometimes it's called the weighted round robin balancing algorithm, and then you have the dynamic. Okay, there's also fastest con, there's least con, and stuff like that. Okay, all right, so now how do we actually carry out this balancing stuff? Because our aim here is to actually get requests from the outside world, which we are going to be using curl. Now we've established that fact from our web server. Again, I'm always going back to it. If you've not watched that video, go back and watch that video. It's very, very important that you do. Okay, now the first before we actually move to actually specifying what the balancing algorithm we are going to use, there is a need for us to actually specify which server is actually handling which request. Yeah, because if we look at this, depending on the algorithm that we choose, it could be Webo 1 serving the request, it could be Webo 2 serving the request, and this request is going to be given back to our load balancer, and then our load balancer is going to send the request to the web browser or to the client. Yeah, okay, so there is a need for us to actually specify that which particular machine actually executed that particular request. Now, one way we can actually do it, or a way we can actually do it, is by using the add header directive in Nginx. Add header directive in Nginx. Now, how do we do that? Well, we actually do that by just going to our configuration file on the server context or on the server block. We just add a directive called add header, and then we pass in our parameter. Okay, now let's get on with it. So I'm going to open this using sudo privilege etc nginx. Now it's on sites available. Now it's default because you're not using it as this nginx as a virtual host in this case, and then this is it. So now the add header directive, you can actually put it anywhere inside your server block. That means you can put it here, anywhere. You could just put it anywhere, but for me, I just like putting mine just directly beneath the server name. That it is my own preference. I just like putting it there. So press I to enter inserting mode, and then what I'm going to do, add header. Then according to ALX, we have to do x served by. Now, because this is a string, you could use a single quote or a double quote, but I'm going to use, let's use a double quote in this case, and then add this here, because here, which we actually did in the live session, in the load balancing live session, we actually used a single quote. I could show you if I do etc nginx sites available, then default. You could see here, you can see we actually used a single quote, but yeah, I'm going to use a double quote to actually specify that you could actually use anyone because it's basically a string. Okay, now if you are going to be doing this via a bash script, you shouldn't hard code it on the bash script, because if you hard code it on the bash script, it's not reusable, because anytime that bash script is going to be run on any machine, irrespective of the hostname of the machine, is actually going to be web02, or is actually going to be the name in which you had coded. A dynamic and optimized way you could do this is by actually calling the host name on your bash script. And now you see when I run this, you see it actually returned this, right? So in my bash script here, I think we should in my file here, let's assume I'm converting this to a bash script. So this should be able to, I can just copy copy. Yep, can just copy this, go back to the same file, and then just paste it here. I can just paste it like this. This is just for educational purpose or for teaching you guys, but when you are putting this on a bash script, please use the host name to get the name of the host, and then add it. But for ALX wants us to do something like this: web02, say except by web02, right? Okay. What did I just do? Yep. Okay, so I'm just removing these parts. Then I'm saving. Now, because I've made edits to the configuration file, I don't need to restart it. However, if you are making your configurations, if on your bash script that you are adding, assuming you are doing this for the purpose of tackling the ALX SE program load balancing project, end your statement with sudo service nginx restart. Please end it with sudo nginx restart, because if you don't end it with a restart, you kind of do what I'm about to do now, you definitely run into error. Like you get the checks correct. However, there will be one there that will be flagging error. I don't know the exact check, but you won't get all checks correct. You have one incorrect. So, but then I also stated the difference between the nginx restart and the nginx reload. So because I only made edits to my configuration file, I don't need to actually restart it. I just have to reload the configuration. Now to do that, I just need to do sudo. Now you could use service nginx reload, but for me, I want to use nginx. Yeah, you could actually use nginx. So nginx, then s, then I'm going to say reload. Yeah, and then now it's reloaded. Now to specify that, if I do call localhost, and in this case I want to see the headers. It is caps, it is I in caps. I want to see the header. Now voila, you can see I now have X served by. So by doing this, we now know the server that actually processed any request from this directory we actually added to the header here. Now if we actually also come to this web01 here, and then we run the same thing here called localhost. Come on. You see, now I have xf by web01 and xf by web02. Okay. So irrespective of if you use a single quote or a double quote, it doesn't really matter, right? So long as it's a string, it's going to still work. Okay. Now there needs to be a balancing algorithm in which we need to kind of choose, right? There needs to be a balancing algorithm. Well, okay. Now if we come back to my Docker container here, in which we have the configuration files here, if we come back here, we see that this is the default configuration that you're actually going to use. Now you could actually add your front end. You can actually add in your front end configurations here, or you could actually leave it this way. But one thing you want to do, let's assume you are not using the front end directive here, of which that's what you are going to be using. But let's say you're not going to be using the front end directive. You actually want to come here and actually add in the bind parameter. You actually want to, for just directly below this the mode here, which is called HTTP, you actually want to bind it by saying bind. Then you could actually do something like this and then specify the port, which we are going to be saying port 80. But let's say you are actually accepting a HTTPS, you could also change 80 to 443 depending, right? You can actually do something like this, or you can actually do something like this. Both are actually same. this is actually 0 here is actually the short form of saying 0000, which is a generic way in networking to say all IP address available on this current machine, right? Which is still the same thing as if you do something like this, right? But for me, I want to use this, and then you do this. I've explained what this is actually doing, yeah? Okay, but I'm not going to be doing this. Instead, I want to be explicit by using the front end directive. So I'm going to say front end. So I'm going to say front end. Now I'm going to I'm only doing this so that my future self is going to be proud of me. Yeah, that's basically why I'm doing this, to make things very easy for me to understand later on in the future. So I'm just going to say for my front end, I'm going to specify the front end. Let's say the front end here is sami.com.ng. Now the front end is a directive. Now sami.com.ng. Now let me change it to Sami Kings to match my domain. SamiKings.com becomes a parameter. Now what I'll do is to now underneath this, I will now put in my bind statement, right? I'll now say bind all IP address to port 80. Now I will then specify my default backend server, right? I will then specify that means any connection that comes for. That's the reason why I'm actually using this front-end directives to kind of specify that any connection that is coming from this, because if we put this inside here, remember this is a default, so it's going to be all. But then if we do something like this, now going to be like telling us, okay, it's for this particular domain, yeah. So I'm just going to say my default. So my default using the default backend, then I'm now going to specify a parameter in which I'm going to specify, let's just say backend. Let's just say the backend is Sami. Backend is SamiKings.com.ng back end. Okay, let's say this is my default backend. So what is going to happen is once a request comes for samikings.com.ng, it's going to bind that to port 80, and then it's going to route that request to my backend servers. Now on this backend, I'm now going to specify a backend, and then the name of the backend I specified here. So here I specify samikings.com.ng_backend. Now you could also decide to put here as your front end samikings.tech. I think that's what I used while I was doing this project. Then I now did something like backend web servers, samikings.tech backend web servers or web servers. I don't know, but I can't remember right now. But basically, it's still the same thing I'm actually trying to achieve here. So I'll copy. Then where this particular cursor is, I'm going to paste. Okay. So now it therefore means that any request that actually comes for this front end is going to be routed to my backend. Now in here I will now need to first specify the balancing algorithm that we're actually going to use. So for the balancing algorithm, which we can specify using the balance directive, now we can now specify what balancing algorithm we want to use. Now for the ALX program, they said you should use the round robin. You should use the round robin. Okay, now while I'm doing this, now I just remember that there's some point that ALX actually said you should make sure that it's being started by the init script. Well, by default, when you install, before you actually go forward to kind of before that particular parameter becomes a concern to you, the first thing you want to do is to first check if when you install your HAProxy, it automatically starts up. If it doesn't start up, it therefore means that it's not been added to the init script, meaning anytime this machine goes off now, like this my Docker, like I shut down my Docker container and then I relog back in, my load balancer is not going to be on. But if when you kind of exit your terminal, you exit your machine and you relog in back to your machine, or you shut down and turn down your machine, yeah, that's the best thing to do, not logging in and logging out. When you shut down and then you turn on your computer system, Nginx does not Nginx, now HAProxy doesn't automatically boots up. Then you will now need to be concerned about the init script. Now if you want to do that, there is actually added to this video or added to the project also, there's also a resource by DigitalOcean that specify how you want to do that. Now to just do that, you just have to actually go to your default HAProxy and then just specify and just set out the value to be 1. Okay, I'm going to be adding the link in the description so you guys can see how I'm actually getting the answers to it, and I'm also training you guys to actually know how to read and gain information for yourself and not always relying on videos, because most of the times I might not be available to kind of explain this concept, or a video might not be available to kind of explain this concept to us, right? Okay, all right, so now let's proceed. So I'm basically saying that, okay, this should be a round robin. Now the next thing I will now want to do is to use the server. You should use the server directive and then specify our servers according to the host name. So the way it is the host's name. This is the way it is. Please, if you don't get this particular method properly, you are always going to run into errors. So it is the host's name, then space the host IP, which is the host IP. I think I will do this using caps. The host IP, and if you want to specify a particular port in which the request should be routed to, then you specify the port using this and then port. Still going to put this in caps. Then let's say you want a situation whereby you actually want to check if that particular server is up. Like there might be a situation whereby this particular server might be down. Yeah, you don't want to send a request to a machine that is down, right? So now you can now pass in another one called check, not check, called check. So using this format, the server. So first I'm going to come here and then I'll copy this, because anytime I run the host name command, if I run host name now, you see it's still the same thing that's here, that is still being shown here, right? Come on, what's happening? That's still being shown here. Sorry, my system is a little is behaving funny. Okay, so what I'll just do is to just come here first for my Webo one, is to just copy the host name here. Then for the host name, then I'll paste this, then I'll remove these parts. Yeah, now the host IP address for this particular system, I'm just going to be putting any random IP address. Now please put in the corresponding IP address for your Webo one. So let's just say it is 123.456.789.0, and then I want to use port 18. And then I also want to check if it's up before sending in a request. Then again, I also come here and do this server. I'm still going to paste that in. However, I'll change 1 to 2. And then on the IP address, I'll do 111.222.333.444. Then specify that this port should be, let's just say 5456. I'm just giving, and then I could just say check. And just like so, you're actually done with the load balancing project. Now, all these things that we have done, it's now your job to now put them in a bash script. It's not just like put this stuff that we've done in a bash script and then run it on a particular machine. Now you might ask me, okay, Sammy, how can I do this? So I won't save this, so I'll just press this Q exclamation. I won't save this. Now what you now need to do, let's say this is your bash script, vi, let's say lb bash, let's just call this .sh. Yeah, and then I just want to change the modification once I'm done. Then it's lb bash.sh, and yeah, just notice that it is N, not B. So I'll change this to B. Okay, so what I actually want you to kind of, how do you get down to doing it, is to first your shebang. Then you can actually use depending, let's say what ALX said is that all your files should start with user bin bash, then you should use that. But for me, I like using user bin env and bash. Yeah, and then you could just put in your comments or whatever. So you could just do an echo. Yeah, you could just say echo this. So you can just say echo, then you could put your configurations in between here. So front end, just the same way we've done it, then back end. Then if you actually want to overwrite it, then you can use this, and then you provide the file path, of which we know that it's etc HAProxy /HAProxy.cfg. We know this is it. So if you actually want to overwrite this, you could use this. But if you actually want to append, just like what we did, we actually append to it, you could now do something like this. And yeah, then you could now reload restart HAProxy. Okay, so that's it about the load balancing project. Now, if you have any questions, if you have any challenge, drop it on the comment section, and yeah, I'm always available to respond to it. Now, if you have not subscribed, kindly subscribe to my channel, turn on the notification bell, and yeah, if you love the video, give a like, and yeah, also do share the video. I will definitely appreciate that. Thank you guys. Have a wonderful day.